Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Dennis with Synaptic Advisory Partners, and I want to take just a couple of minutes today to show you an example of how Youreka can be used with a specific use case in mind of home safety inspections. And so what you're going to see today is an example. We're going to pretend as though we are an organization that's responsible for doing home safety inspections. We're going to go to a family's home, conduct that inspection. We're going to collect a bunch of data using the Youreka mobile app. We're going to identify some potential hazards and health risks, and then we're going to go ahead and push that data back up into Salesforce. So before we get going here, I just want to begin with the end in mind and show us a little bit of what's going to be happening in the back end when we are out doing this inspection. So what you see here is just an example of a Salesforce dashboard. And what's going to be happening when we're pushing this data back into Salesforce is it's going to be feeding things like dashboards and reports, as well as firing off workflow automation and otherwise. So just be keeping that in mind as we're going to be collecting this information. All that information is going to be pumped back into Salesforce. That's going to allow us to make better decisions and understand more about what's going on in the field. So with that, we'll open up our iPad and open the Youreka mobile app, which is connected to Salesforce, and we'll get going with our inspection. So when we open it up, we already have our form ready to go here. And so there's a couple things that you'll notice. At the very top of the form, you're going to see some of these fields are actually already filled out with information. And the reason for that is because we're actually pulling that information from the relevant contact. In this case, the person that we're inspecting's name is Jack. And so we've got that contact information there. And as you can see here, we can actually adjust that information. And when we pass it back up to Salesforce, we can send that updated information back up to the contact there as well. And this just helps for keeping records up to date. So we're going to ask some initial questions here. It looks like the type of this inspection is an initial inspection. Quickly note the date and time that we arrived here. And we'll begin with taking down some notes on what type of house it is. We'll say it's a house or townhouse. Quickly jot down when it was constructed roughly. Take down whether children live in the home. And so you'll see here we actually just showed a second question because of the answer to that first question. And that's a really good example of our conditional display logic. You'll see that happening more and more throughout this form. And obviously there's a huge benefit to this, which is, we're really able to show and hide questions based on answers to previous questions. And it really guides the inspector through their process. So we'll note down whether there was paint on the deteriorated on the wall, whether there's curtains on the windows, what types of curtains are those. There's our display logic again showing. We'll show that there's floor length drapes and baseboard heat. Another example of our display logic here, we're actually showing that this is a fire hazard, right? We've got floor length drapes as well as baseboard heat. So we can not only show the inspector new questions, but we can show them content that'll help them guide their conversation with this person, in this case instructing them that they need to take those drapes down. So we'll move on with the inspection and do a quick mold check. We've got some specific instructions for the inspector to check a couple areas for mold. Looks like there's some obvious signs, so we'll check yes. And right there's your display logic again. We can offer up a few sentences there in terms of instructions for the homeowner on what they should do next. But also, we're going to take a quick photo here. So we'll use the iOS, or if you're on an Android device, we'll use the photo app there. Take a quick photo. I've got a quick shot here of mold. Use the date and timestamp, or we can name the photo whatever we want. Then we can hop in here, and we can actually mark it up if we need to, take notes, anything we want. We'll save the photo, and this will obviously be pushed back up into Salesforce as well and saved for our records, and we can check on it later. And then we're just going to ask about how the homeowner feels about addressing some of these issues with an expert. And so we can either dictate into our iPad or we can type in the response, but here they said that they would like to get these issues taken care of as soon as possible. So we'll say that the inspection is complete. And then finally, we'll just get some quick feedback here. Again, we can dictate that, or we can type it in. It says they were very helpful and knowledgeable. Quickly get a signature here to complete the inspection. Save it, and then we're totally done. We've answered all the questions, and here we are. We're about to push all this information back up to Salesforce and finish the job. So we just clicked View Insights, and this is going to send all that information back up into the system. It's going to update those dashboards and reports, fire off email alerts if we need to. And then the last thing you'll see here is that we're leveraging Salesforce Einstein to give us a couple last-minute insights before we leave the home. So here we're using Einstein in a couple different ways. First of all, we're using Einstein Intent to analyze the free text field to understand whether or not there's this overall sense of urgency with the homeowner in terms of remedying some of these issues. In this case, Einstein is saying, yes, it's fairly urgent in terms of what their response was. So very similarly, you can see here that we're also using Einstein's sentiment. And so this is taking the information from that second free text field, and which was basically overall client feedback. And in this example, they said that the inspector was very helpful and knowledgeable. And so Einstein is analyzing that text and saying, generally speaking, this is a fairly positive comment, and we can use that later on to gauge, overall performance metrics within the field for inspectors in terms of how knowledgeable they were for the person in the home. And finally, we're using Einstein Vision here to actually identify the kind of mold that we saw right there in the home. So what we're able to do here is we're sending that image up, and Einstein is evaluating it with the image model that it has in the system, and it's pushing back down the name of that mold so that we can either A, identify it right there on the spot and treat it, or we can create reporting and automation in the system to help expedite the remediation process after the fact. So one final step here, we're going to hop back into Salesforce, and I'll show you this dashboard that I was displaying earlier. And we're actually going to refresh it, and you'll see those numbers change. We went from 45 to 46 inspections that we handled within the time window expressed, and then below that we can also see the number of inspections today went from 2 to 3. And so again, the big value here is that we are gaining insights and understanding in terms of what's going on in the field in real time, no matter how many inspectors you have going out and about doing their jobs. So thanks everyone for watching this demonstration today. If what you've just seen has piqued your interest, you can feel free to visit us at Youreka.io to learn more about the application, or you can visit us on the Salesforce App Exchange, where you can either test drive the application or you can click Get It Now and install it into your personal Salesforce instance, and you'll get the premium features for 30 days, and you can play around with it and figure out how it might be most useful for you. So thanks again for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.